That's the summary of the entire course, and the course is about as long as the Bible. It's huge, but it can summarize in these few words. If you understand what that means, you don't need to do the course. You might still enjoy reading it, but you don't need it. Now, these are the interesting lines here about defensiveness. When you feel the need arise to be defensive about anything, know that you have identified yourself with an illusion. It is not danger that comes when defenses are laid down. It is safety, it is peace, it is joy, and it is God. So, when you feel the need arise to be defensive about anything, know that you have identified yourself with an illusion. When you become defensive about something, then it will be something that is conceptual. You as a concept or some concept you hold that you need to defend because you have identified with it, so you are defending your sense of self, your fictitious sense of self. That means you're defending an illusion. When you don't defend, because the truth of who you are does not need to be defended, so to let go of defenses can be a way of accessing the deeper dimension of who you are. And of course it takes you beyond ego, because the defensiveness is ego. Ego is conceptual identity. And then there's one short line here. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. You're safe already, so you don't need to defend anything. That brings me to at the very beginning of the Course in Miracles, before even page 1, there are a few lines that are supposed to summarize the entire Course, and they go like this. Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. That's the summary of the entire Course, and the Course is about as long as the Bible. It's huge, but it can summarize in these few words. If you understand what that means, you don't need to do the Course. You might still enjoy reading it, but you don't need it. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Herein meaning knowing this lies the peace of God. I'll just let it be at that. I'm not going to interpret those lines. I believe they're most powerful if you just let them sink in. Judgment, again, the choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. The choice to judge rather than to know. So judgment is applying concepts. And then you have another dimension that Course in Miracles calls to know. And Course in Miracles would say that the judgment is not real knowing. It's the illusion of knowing. You have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers and sisters, totally without judgment. You have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers and sisters, I'm adding the sisters, totally without judgment. So when you meet another human being without imposing conceptualization, it does not mean you become defenseless, or it just means there's you know the deeper reality of that human being. But you also know, in a non-conceptual way, if the personality of that person is dysfunctional, has deep unconsciousness. You see that also. It's not a judgment. You just see it for what it is, but you don't mistake the personality and its unconsciousness for who that person is.
I understand, I think pretty well, the basic idea of leaving behind the conceptual thought and making a retreat to being in order to reposition and to cope and to start out with, again, in the conceptual world we must live in at some time, with fresh thoughts and new ideas. But I'm asking you, and not necessarily expecting the answer just now, today, but hoping that this is a challenge and an invitation for you to help us to have the one thing that I think I've not been able to achieve in my own life and would like to. Even at 76, I'm still striving to have one, just one, really original thought. That's what I'm looking for, and of all people in this world that I've heard about and met, I think you're the guy that might help us with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a lovely question. Thank you. Well, there's one success to be reported. You already had an original question. A very honest question, and a question that actually, and surprisingly, nobody has asked before. So, there you are. I don't know if that's the whole answer, but that's certainly the truth. Asking questions is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and it is I would even say more important to ask an original question than to expect an original thought or original answer, because an original question is an original thought. A question is a thought. And so you'll find that the ability to ask questions when in any situation, when you have to arrive at an answer, at a solution, to try to work something out, to ask questions and to ask the right questions is more important than expecting the right answer. And often the answer is already hidden in the question. When you can ask the right question and say, oh, And this already Socrates knew, because his entire teaching is questions and answers. It's called the Socratic dialogues. The Socratic dialogues. He continuously he encouraged people to ask questions, and then he didn't immediately give answers. He asked more questions, and gradually leading people to the truth, to realization of this or that, whatever it may be. So, in many situations, I often people present something to me. Do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And then I said, have you asked this? Have you asked that? No. Well, ask this and ask that and ask that, and then we'll know. It's an art that you can develop, asking questions. You need an alertness. So I'm really talking about you already asked an original question and a very honest question. So this is certainly an original thought. And let's see what happens after that. The more you get in touch with the alert stillness, that is presence, the more likely it is that you will perhaps have more original questions. And sometimes perhaps, original thoughts. An original question is an original thought. It is true that in most people, the thoughts that happen in your mental field, most of them are not even your thoughts. You say, these are my thoughts, but they have come into you from the collective, especially nowadays when everybody is connected with the collective through these weird devices. You just turn on your thing and you look and you're taking in collective thoughts. And then you start thinking whatever it is. Either you agree or you violently disagree. Yes, yes, yes. No, no, no. And then what people don't realize is that the thoughts live in you and pretend to be you. You think they're yours, but they are thoughts that have floated into your mind. Most of them collective thoughts. And so it's almost like carrying something in you that possesses you. You're in the grip of certain thoughts. If you read social media and all that kind of thing on the internet, it's full of millions of people who are in the grip of certain thought movements, and they are collective thought movements. They are, for example, now they're kind of, there's a separation of this one huge collective thought movement that goes one way, and there's another huge collective thought movement that goes another way. And you belong either to one or to the other. You feel drawn to the one or to the other. And it's not ultimately nothing to do with you or who you really are. You are at the mercy of these energy fields that move through you. And you say things and the energy speaks through you. The thoughts live in you. You are inhabited by thoughts. So as I mentioned before somewhere, maybe not here, the people say, I think, but in most cases, thinking is not, you have no say in the matter unless there's some awareness. You have no say in the matter as to what you are thinking. So there's as little truth in the statement, I think, as there is in the statement, I beat my heart. Because you're not doing it, it happens to you. Now, breathing is partly voluntary and partly involuntary. You say, I breathe. Now you have some control over your breathing. You can stop it for a while, you can deepen it. However, breathing also happens to you because, although you can stop it for a little while, I don't think you cannot commit suicide just by holding your breath. Something in you makes you breathe, so breathing happens to you. Well, you'd have to put some plastic over your head, or let's not go there. But you cannot commit suicide, you cannot hold your breath for that long. So it's stronger than you. So breathing happens to you. The circulation of the countless hundreds of functions that are being coordinated every second in your body. The temperature of the body, the circulation of the blood, every organ coordinating its functions with the other organs. There's a vast intelligence operating continuously throughout your body. And it's happening to you. You are not doing it. You are not. You have no idea how the digestion works. You are not digesting your food. It's being digested for you. You are not in control of the functions of your kidneys or your liver. Even now, the greatest scientists are still figuring out more and more about how these things work. It's just an amazing intelligence hiding there, but it's all happening for you and to you. So you are not doing it, but you think that, as far as thoughts are concerned, that you think your thoughts. You don't, unless there's an awareness in you where you become this dimension has emerged, where you become aware of what thoughts are going through your head, and you can even say, I'd rather not think that because it's totally pointless and futile, and then it dissolves. That is possible. Or to simply observe a thought takes away the momentum from a thought that is not pleasant. When you observe what a thought is doing to you, how a thought makes you unhappy, when you observe that, there's an awareness there. When you can see that this thought is making me unhappy, and you see, then it begins to dissolve. But for most humans who are not aware, they are at the mercy of their thoughts, although they continuously think, this is what I think, as if there was a volition there. But what really is happening, this is the thinking that happens to me. So it's completely conditioned. So instead of saying, I think, it would be better to say, I am being thought.
Satnam, Eckhart, I go to bed with you at night. So it's very nice to see you here in person. So I'm here asking a question for several people. We were all praying that I would get chosen so I could ask this question. We're just curious. Do you still experience moments of losing consciousness? For example, if someone cuts you off in traffic, the person who called you or said slow driver, the story you gave, bad driver. Do you ever still experience yourself losing it? And what is that like for you and calling yourself back?
No, in those cases I don't. I'm just fine. It doesn't affect me at all. But sometimes I don't. There are emotions. They can come when I see violence inflicted on humans or animals. I can experience weeping. There are sometimes when I see human suffering, there is an emotion, but it doesn't last very long, it passes through. But there's no reaction to those things, traffic or humans, I think people who have worked with me can probably tell me if I'm wrong, because when you work with somebody, then you get to know them, especially when things need to get done. So there's a fairly constant sense of presence, but it's not always the same intensity of presence. The intensity of presence varies. It sometimes recedes into the background, and then more of my attention is taken up with the foreground. I have to deal with this and this and this. Then the attention goes there, and the presence is kind of background presence, like a humming in the, like an om in the background, and here things happen. But then times, because I love doing nothing, and I do that quite often. And then sometimes presence comes completely, so the person is virtually obliterated, and there's just consciousness. In teaching situations, for lack of a better word, like this, the person is not really here. It's not the person who is teaching. It's consciousness is using the vehicle of the person, is using the mind of the person in order to manifest this. So in a teaching situation, there is just consciousness. Eckhart is only the frame, or the window frame, but the light comes from somewhere else. The light that comes through the window, and yes, there are so degrees of intensity of presence, but it's always there, either obliterating Eckhart or in the background, and then the person deals with things as best he can.
And did that come after you had your experience of awakening? Was it like that from the very beginning, or did that come with your practice?
Well, the peace was there, has been there since then, but there has been an integration of that into life that took longer, so that it went into every aspect of my life. I was still deluded in some ways, even after the shift happened, because the personality was still working, and I still thought at that point my destiny was to be in the academic world, and I continued to pursue a PhD, not knowing that it was no longer what I was meant to do. The personality still had a momentum, and went on with that for a few years. There were also times after that when a few times I could feel the pull of suffering in the form of the mind tugging me, like occasionally went like, come this way, come and suffer. And what that did was, there was an intensification of presence suddenly when that happened. So then, I'm not going that way. And so that suddenly the light went up. And then a few more times it happened. Come, be unhappy. You have so many reasons to be unhappy, don't you remember? Now, any mind can, if you want to remember reasons for being unhappy, I'm sure everybody here could do that. I could. Even now, I could. Reasons for being unhappy. Anybody can do that if you allow that kind of thought to take over your mind, and then then confuse it with reality, a sad story in the head. So a few times the mind tried but didn't get very far. And And then another shift came to a deeper level when I started to work with people, because that required a further deepening. Working with people required a further deepening, when especially people who were in suffering. And I noticed that when I started seeing individuals who came, often very unhappy people or people who were suffering from serious illness or had great loss. And I noticed whenever I sat in front of these people and listened to their story, I would go into a very deep state of presence, then deeper than I'd experienced before, very deep and intense presence. And some of those people, if they were sensitive enough, it happened several times, they stopped and said, "What? You're doing something." I wasn't doing anything. "Yeah, you're doing something." One lady said she was a former nun in a Catholic monastery and became, after 15 years, became very unhappy because she hadn't found God. And so then she came to me looking for God, but of course she was looking for herself, the deepest source of her being. And I was sitting listening to her, and then she said, "Oh, you're doing healing, you're healing me." I said, "Oh," because I didn't know that I was doing that. And for a while, because I didn't, at the time didn't fully understand the consciousness and the process, it just was there, but I didn't understand it. I thought I was a healer suddenly. And then she sent me some people who wanted just physical healing. But I noticed when people who just wanted physical healing, I didn't go that deep at all. It's only people who were ready for a deeper transformation, then I would go very deep. And then when groups happened, again, a deepening happened again of a different kind, because a group is a different energy field again. So there was a deepening there that was somewhat different kind, it's hard to describe. But my great learning was with individual people, spiritual counseling, also the words that came out of that deep state of connectedness surprised me many times. I know that some of you have already had similar experiences when people came to you with problems and you were able to just be still and listen, and then you found yourself saying some words that were just right. But there are always two parts of that. One is the words, and one is the energy field that's behind the words. And sometimes words are not even necessary in a situation like that. So that was a process, and then later the teachings became a book. And there itself, the writing of the book was another way of connecting with presence and allowing presence to use this mind to express itself through. It's a long adventure of ways in which presence manifests it through this vehicle, as it is for you. For nobody can predict in what ways presence will flow through you and manifest through you, but it is doing it already, and it will. Who knows what situations you go into and become a healing influence in those situations. You are meant to do that, to be there, because the universe needs that. The evolutionary impulse behind the universe is behind you. It wants you to go through that transformation and then be the agent for transformation in this world. So that is our common destiny. Thank you. This mind-made sense of self is also much more focused on the negative than the positive. To be free, you awaken to who you are beyond your history and your life situation.
Is the ego the source of our thoughts, or are our thoughts generated elsewhere and pass through the ego?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. There is no ego apart from the thoughts. The thoughts, identification with thoughts is ego. But the thoughts that go through your mind, of course, are linked to the collective mind of the culture you live in, humanity as a whole. So they are not your thoughts as such, but you pick them up from the collective, most of them. And so you identify with thinking, and the identification with thinking becomes ego, which means simply that you believe in every thought that arises, and you derive your sense of who you are from what your mind is telling you of who you are. Opinions, viewpoints of that's me. That's some people talk to themselves and you are so good. Why doesn't the world recognize you? Or the mind says, you're no good. Same thing. You're no good at all. You fail at everything, don't you? Again, and then you believe in it. And then you suddenly have a low view of yourself. Why you have a low view? Because you believed in your thoughts. And why are you thinking those thoughts? Probably you picked them up somewhere, maybe in childhood. Maybe your mom was so stressed out that you said you're no good. And so you pick up certain thoughts and they get stuck in your head. Thoughts that you hear in childhood, they're little energy forms, like entities, and they get stuck in your head and don't refuse to go. They go. And the more you believe in it, the more more deeply lodged they become in your mind. And so some people are stuck with very hostile entities. I'm saying entity, not in some spooky way, but every thought is an energy form, and as such, we could call it an entity. And there are many people in this world who are stuck with hostile, life-denying, continuously critical and attacking entities that they carry in their head, and they believe that is who they are. And they are continuously attacking themselves. And if they are not attacking themselves, they attack others around them. Let me tell you who you are. Of course, what they're really saying is, let me tell you who I am. So they project the famous saying, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. Which means you look at reality through the screen of your thinking and your judgment, which is conditioned by the past. A dreadful prison to live in. It's like blinkers, worse than blinkers. It's like looking at reality through heavy veils. Ooh, looks so dark here. Is that a human being or? So the identification with thinking, believing in your thoughts, having no space outside of the movement of thought. Again, here we come to the vital thing, lack of space inside. That is the unconscious condition, spiritually, completely unconscious. And then you are burdened with a heavy ego. You are the ego, which is not an entity apart from thought. It is thoughts that you have identified with. And the first moment of freedom comes when you realize that certain thoughts have been going through your head for years, perhaps, and that they are only thoughts, and that you are not the thought, you're the awareness. In my case, I became aware that I had a thought, for example, that started in childhood, one of many negative thoughts I had. Bad things always happen to me. bad things always happen to me. And that was when I saw people around me, okay, they have got all these nice things, and always there would be bad things happening. And of course, your perception then becomes selective. When you have a thought like that, you notice much more, because in everybody's life, things, in daily life, things go wrong. You miss a bus, you get stuck in a traffic jam, or you lose some money. But yes, this is normal. But if you have the thought, bad things always happen to me, you're extremely aware of those things, and they confirm to you that the thought is correct. And this is the selective perception of reality through the screen of thinking. So the reality will confirm to you, and not only that, that thought or any thought of that kind actually attracts bad things, negative things. Or if you believe people are basically bad, and that's a deep-seated belief, and you don't realize it's only a thought in your head or a belief, not only would you single out where you observe unethical or bad behavior in others, you would, there it is. Not only that, you actually are much more likely to encounter people who manifest that kind of behavior because you attract it. And so that's just incredible how people create their world through that. So freedom comes from stepping out, encountering, first of all, a little bit of space inside you, presence. And then from there you realize certain thoughts as repetitive and just a thought. Bad things always happen to me. Oh, there it goes again. I thought that before. So that's to become free of ego means becoming free of thought, identification with thought. That's the end of the ego. It may reassert itself from time to time, but at least that's the awakening. What about your thoughts? Habitual thoughts, do you?
Probably that I have to get everything right. There's an intense, figure it out and get it right. It rules me.
And if it's not right?
I escape. I just won't do it. I pretty much predict ahead of time, so I won't try a lot of times.
Yes. Yes. Some people are afraid of not succeeding in whatever they do because they have their self-image, which is derived from thinking, would suffer. If I fail at something, then my self-image will be injured, and therefore I'm not even going to try. And again, that's to do with deriving your identity from thinking. And even the thought, I have failed, is a lie. I am a failure is an even greater lie. You have not failed, you can simply reinterpret and say, I have learned something here. This is not for me, for example. So, but why believe the lies that your mind produces? So, as you know, many people live with a very hostile mind. But those people their motivation would probably be very great, I would hope, to get out of their minds. But first they need to realize that their problems are self-generated, mind-generated, not world-generated. as I mentioned before, not that it's not challenging anymore. There will be challenges, but of a different kind. External challenges will continue to come. The challenges, the problems and difficulties of the unobserved mind, however, will no longer be there. And that's a huge percentage of suffering in a person's life. A huge percentage of suffering, of unhappiness, to use a generic term. A huge percentage of unhappiness arises not created by situations, but by the mind. You can verify that wherever you are and see when you begin to feel upset, you begin to feel unhappy, what is it that causes you to feel upset or unhappy? Is it the situation, or is it what your mind is telling you about the situation? What makes you unhappy? You can test it in the most seemingly insignificant situation because the mechanism is the same, whether it's a big suffering or a small suffering. You are in a queue in the supermarket, it's not moving, the person is so slow, the cashier, and so inefficient, and you have so much else to do. Well, why should you be standing here waiting when if they could only find people who are more efficient, and just can't stand it anymore, I'm not going back here anymore, I really should be. That's the beginning of suffering. It's unhappiness. And what's creating it? The situation or your mind? And when you suddenly, in that, and this is only a small example, you can take almost your entire life. When suffering arises, is it really the situation? In some cases it may be, because there can be dreadful things that can happen. But if you're still unhappy several months later, then it's also your mind again. But so observe how, when you become aware of what your mind is doing, when you're upset, when unhappiness arises, see, okay, is it the situation or is it my mind? And suddenly the awareness comes, and your mind is no longer the unobserved mind. Now your mind becomes the observed mind. And then you realize what your mind is doing, and then you stand in the supermarket in the queue and say, okay, I don't really need all that. What would it be like to just accept this moment as it is without adding the mental stuff to it? Oh, not so bad. I'm just standing here, breathing, looking at people. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. If your mind doesn't tell you there's something wrong with it, it's actually okay. It's just the present moment. If I were not standing here, I would be standing somewhere else. Or if I wouldn't be standing, I would be sitting somewhere else. Or walking somewhere else. Not that different. But their mind tells you should be somewhere else. I shouldn't be. So you can tell the difference between situations where you can do something about it and situations where you can't do anything about it. But even if you can do something about it, make sure that you accept the present moment first and then you take action. Because if you don't accept the present moment, the action you take will be action arising from upset or from anger. And this is karmic action. It creates more of the same stuff coming back at you. It might solve this particular situation, but in solving this particular situation through your angry reaction, you've created 2 or 3 other situations in the next moment that reflect back this karmically. Insane. Normal. This is why I say normal equals insane. So observe your mind. See how much of your unhappiness is not the situation that you lost your job, your marriage collapsed, whatever it is that causing the unhappiness, or the mental commentary, the story in the head that tells you how bad this is, either by blaming somebody else or by blaming yourself, or blaming life, or blaming God. You can choose whatever you want to blame. The mind is happy, whatever the mind can blame, is the egoic mind is happy with that. But that's all those challenges or suffering or difficulties, those things begin to evaporate from your life. What remains, however, is certain challenges that come in wherever you are, through situations, through other people who are still unconscious. There are a few left, you might have noticed, who are still unconscious, and you can't remove yourself from that. So you're faced with certain situations that correspond to where humanity is at in their collective level of consciousness. You might have physical problems still, although many illnesses are created by the unobserved mind. There are other factors too. And the body will eventually grow old. And that's a big problem if you make it into one. And a dreadful thing if you had completely identified with the body and now it's beginning to shrink or disappear or collapse. Who am I now? If you, for the past few decades, you're looking in the mirror gave you most of your sense of who you are, or taking selfies. One day, a few years pass, then the selfies are not that satisfying to look at anymore. Who am I now? There's something wrong, I need to get a new iPhone. So that's the beware of what your mind is doing. And if you only get, there are many things from this evening that are potentially life transforming, and even just taking one with you would be enough. Even if you took the last thing we just mentioned, whenever suffering arises, upset, angry reaction, unhappiness, be aware of where does it come from? My mind or the situation? And if it is your mind, do I want that? Who am I? Am I those thoughts? No. Well, who am I? Do I want those thoughts? Do I want that unhappiness? Is that my choice to think unhappy thoughts and feel unhappy? Day after day, night after night, every time I wake up in the middle of the night, the same thoughts come and make me unhappy. And I think this is the reality of my life. The thoughts that make me unhappy, people think that's the reality of my life. It's a total illusion. And so you step out of that into, oh, that's just things that happened. And that's just life. Things come and go. You lose, you gain. And then you lose again, and then you gain and loss. Impermanence. Can't hang on to anything. There's no security out there. No matter how many life insurance you have or whatever, it's an illusion. Life insurance. I have a big life insurance. Well, to start with, it shouldn't be called life insurance, it should be called death insurance. But that's not so attractive anymore, it would destroy the illusion. This mind-made sense of self is also much more focused on the negative than the positive. To be free, you awaken to who you are beyond your history and your life situation. It is madness to argue with is. It is. intelligent action arises if the starting point is alignment with what is internally. The nature and function of challenges and difficulties in the evolutionary process. We can use the term challenge, which already has a positive spin to it. Something happens and you call it, it's a big challenge. But without the positive spin, you would say, it's really bad. It's so bad what has happened. Then you become more spiritual and say, I'm faced with a challenge. Okay. Now, challenges come in many forms. There's no human life that is not profoundly challenged in one way or another. Some humans are challenged by physical challenges, difficulties. Other humans are usually challenged by dreadful psychological challenges and their own minds. Personal challenges in your personal life, collective challenges that affect millions of people at the same time, although in various ways. We've just had one. So it seems that many things are almost designed in one's life to stop you from evolving or becoming more conscious. And many people say, if I only had surroundings, if I lived in a place that was peaceful and calm, and my needs are met, my basic needs are met, and I got pure food and everything else, so I don't have to worry about things anymore. If I could only live in this perfect environment, I could really make spiritual progress. If I only had that, but I don't. I can't. And no matter what stage you're at, always obstacles arise continuously. Sometimes things go well, and then another obstacle goes, and then they go well again. Obstacles come in many, many forms: physical, relationship, financial, home situation, all kinds of things. Pandemic is a collective one, and other collective ones most likely coming soon. The strange thing is, evolution happens only when faced with obstacles. That happens on every level, physical level, every level. It's only when an obstacle is encountered that there's a call for more energy, and then more energy flows in, and whatever the frequency of energy could even be physical. For example, if you want to have a stronger body, it's not going to happen if you lie on your sofa every day, drinking beer and watching Netflix. You can say, I want a stronger body. Yeah, well, it's not happening. Now, what do you have to do to have a stronger body? To put it in strange terms, you have to, at first, you have to make life difficult for your body. For example, you go jogging, and you think, I wish I was watching Netflix on my sofa, but and the body doesn't like it. But you say, and then you lift a weight. So you're making life difficult for your body, very difficult. But only then it happens. Your body then demands more energy, and an influx of energy comes that eventually is translated into muscle growth and so on. And then a point comes when you actually more energy has come, then you suddenly enjoy that. But the enjoyment is preceded by experiencing difficulty and obstacle. On every level, humans evolve. Many, many people here, I know that from what people have told me, it's always the case. Many of you would not be here if you had not encountered very difficult life situations, either through loss or breakdown of relationships, loss of loved ones, serious physical illness, accident. Many people have told me I would never have come or realized what this is about if I hadn't gone through this difficult period in my life. It's then there's an influx of energy that comes, and at the highest level, it is an increase in consciousness. As you're faced with difficulties, some difficulties can be removed on a practical level. Many other difficulties require an increase in consciousness for you to overcome them or transcend them. I've had correspondence from people in prison, some are in prison for life, and they've said, I have awakened through coming into contact with this teaching. I have awakened, and I am free in a prison cell. So it is in your comfort zone. It is the very unlikely that the awakening will happen to any human being as long as they remain in their comfort zone. Perhaps if this is the last incarnation, they've already gone through an enormous amount of evolution in previous lifetimes, and then perhaps at a very early age they can already awaken. But most humans, they do not awaken as long as they're in their comfort zones. Oh, it's good enough. Comfort zone is not all that happy, mostly, but at least it's not too bad. But when you're taken out of your comfort zone, that's where evolution happens, the evolution of consciousness. So in other words, you need the bad to evolve. Sorry. And life doesn't leave you alone. Even after awakening, you got challenges come. Oh my God. But what changes is, and this is important, that you no longer demand that the world should leave you alone and should make you happy. It can't. As long as you think it should, and there's always something wrong when you're being challenged by this or that. You think there's something deeply wrong with my life. I'm being challenged. Or in other words, I'm experiencing all these difficulties. And so then you realize you drop the demand that the world should make you happy. Because the world isn't here for that. It's here to make you conscious, to awaken you. And it does that by confronting you with difficulties, one after another. Now, some difficulties are so bad that they kill you. That's true. That could happen. And then you get another chance after that. It was perhaps the philosopher Nietzsche who said, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. There's some truth to that. So when challenges happen, the important thing is, how do I meet this challenge? with what state of consciousness do I meet this challenge? And that determines the further development of that particular situation also. If you're able to meet a challenge consciously instead of reactively, then quickly it becomes transformed also externally as a challenge. To meet it consciously means, in the first instance, to accept this moment as it is, no matter what it presents you with, no matter what this moment, what form this moment takes. You accept this moment as it is, because you might as well, because it already is. It is madness to argue with is. It is. Of course, then what can you do about it? If you need to take action or can take action, intelligent action arises if the starting point is alignment with what is internally. This is what is. And then you act if action is needed. Right action will arise. But if immediately you go into reactivity, you make the situation worse than it is. You often amplify something bad and becomes even worse and worse through reactivity. You can verify this when dealing with an unconscious human. If you react to their unconsciousness, then you yourself become more unconscious and you make them more unconscious and you get huge drama. And again, collectively too, when faced with a difficulty, how aware can you be when you are prior to taking action? Are you just reacting, or are you able to be aware, which means is wisdom present? We haven't mentioned this word before, but it's inseparable from what we're talking about. Wisdom is the higher intelligence that operates through you when you're in touch with the vertical dimension. All you have when you're not in touch with the vertical dimension, you might have the clever human mind that can work things out in a very limited way. But wisdom is not there. Wisdom can seize the totality of the situation, and in taking action, it considers immediately other possible consequences of their action in the totality. And not through breaking things down, but there is the same way in which you remember we talked about the two modalities of knowing, conceptual and direct knowing through awareness. And that applies here too when you look at a problem that needs solving. You look at, is there wisdom in what you do or just mental cleverness? And anything you do when you react to a problem, then if you will make it worse, or you solve one problem and create 4 or 5 others in the process of solving one. So the world drama gets amplified through the egoic reactivity that always says, this should not be happening, not aligned with the present moment. So wisdom is what the world needs, and wisdom can only come through awareness. And that is the deeper modality of knowing. Intelligence is not enough. The world is full of intelligent people, so-called. I mean, really, if you really look, is that intelligence? And they're creating that. What are they doing? They got their university degrees, so I suppose in conventional terms, we have to call it intelligence. And then they're creating havoc on the planet. No wisdom. An increase in intelligence will not save us, or an increase in knowledge, what's most Wisdom, only wisdom can, and wisdom is inseparable from awareness, the arising of awareness. It's from the dimension of the vertical dimension of depth, not through thinking. So when you look at a situation and you are able to be alert and still, you look. And then the realization of what action is the right action comes. Usually you can recognize that it is an ideology by the fact that they are not peaceful human beings and by the fact that they have enemies. The question is specifically about focusing on Christian religion, but the answer, I suppose, I don't know what the answer is going to be, but it's going to be probably also refer to other religions in general. Is religion necessary? It depends who you are on the level of the form. For some people, it can be necessary or helpful for two reasons. It can provide the more superficial reason. It can give your life a certain amount of structure, which for some people can be helpful. Regular practice. Gives you a feeling of comfort. Some people have too little structure in their lives, and others have too much already. If you have too little structure in your life, then religion can provide that. More importantly, on another level, religion can either obscure the spiritual dimension within yourself, and often it does, or if used rightly, if approached rightly, if understood on a deeper level, it can help you access and stay in connectedness with that deeper level of yourself or the transcendent dimension of consciousness. Whether or not you need it, only you can know. Whether you find it either helpful or a hindrance, it can be either, depends on you as a person, your past, what function it had in your past, and so on. It is a hindrance if religion becomes an ideology. Then it operates only on the level of the mind and is very similar to any other kind of ideology that you may believe in, whether it's communism as an ideology or any political theory or anything that explains the universe. It could be a metaphysical system that you completely believe in, philosophical system, and so on. So an ideology is something that takes possession of your mind and exerts a controlling function, and it can influence almost your entire mental functioning if it becomes something of overwhelming power in your mind. It's a little thought that grows into a huge thing in your mind, and the tentacles reach into every aspect of your mind, and there are religious people like that. Usually you can recognize that it is an ideology by the fact that they are not peaceful human beings and by the fact that they have enemies, either even within their own religion or another religion. Anybody who does not agree with their ideology becomes an enemy. In the same way that people who were, not nowadays that many, were deeply believing in communism, which was a wonderful idea to start with, of course. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. It was a beautiful idea of equality, everybody the same. That is wonderful. No personal possessions, that's wonderful too. And the only mistake was it was imposed from outside by people who themselves has not gone beyond the egoic state of consciousness. They just played it in their mind as, that's a good idea. And then it was imposed on other people who also were not in that state of consciousness. But most importantly, those who imposed the idea on others forced them to live it out. The ideal became contaminated with ego. So when these people came to power, their egos became inflated to an enormous degree, almost to absurdity, and without realizing it, they reenacted the same evils, in some cases worse than those that they were fighting against. Like in Russia, they saw the injustices associated with the Tsar regime and so on, and they truly saw that. They truly wanted to remove that, and that seemed a good thing. But they had overlooked their own state of consciousness. And the great challenge is for people, power. You can have that very meek person who seems, oh, this is what a lovely person. He seems to have no ego, or very little. He's so, give that person power. Then the latent ego, which is there let's say a person is very poor, has no power at all, give that poor person power, then the latent ego will no longer be latent, it will suddenly come to life. And that happens, is repeated and has been repeated many, many times in countries where frequently the government is overthrown, and then the previous rulers are accused of corruption. And the new people who overthrow the previous, they truly believe that now they have a more just society is going to arrive, because they don't know themselves, they have not observed themselves, and the moment they achieve power, they are seduced by that, and their ego suddenly grows, and they reenact the same thing again. So ideology, religion can turn into, and often does turn into, ideology. You can recognize it, as I said, by the fact that these people are not peaceful. They will condemn other people or other groups of people as evil. They may verbally, even physically, attack others. And if it's not that extreme, it might be that they simply are extremely intolerant towards anybody who does not share their belief system, their ideology. And so that's a clear sign that that kind of religion is a hindrance to the spiritual dimension, to knowing who you are, to being a peaceful human being. It's in the service of the ego. It's an egoic creation. The ego can take scriptures that are beautiful and point to the truth, and can corrupt them, completely misread and misinterpret them, and then they're used in the service of the ego. So that's how religion can become a huge hindrance. But religion can also become an opening into the spiritual dimension. So a religious practice or a religious reading, a reading of a sacred text, an ancient spiritual text, can be a wonderful thing. The questioner mentions Jesus. Following in the steps of Jesus, is that, or is only presence important? When you use it in a deeper sense, following in the steps of Jesus means becoming present. How? First of all, Jesus taught presence in quite a few of his utterances, starting from the flower, that you said you should really look at a flower and see how it lives in the present moment without worry and anxiety. He taught egolessness, deny thyself, which means recognize the unreality of yourself. He spoke of the I am as the foundation, and which is misinterpreted. We have, let's just for a moment in Christianity, we have a historical person, probably, Jesus, and we have Christ. Now, Christ was not his actual name. It was a title given later. And that's already mentioned in the more enlightened parts of the New Testament, that Christ is a dimension of consciousness. And I believe it's St. Paul who says, I must diminish and Christ in me must grow. This is a mystical, deeper interpretation of Jesus, who was an historical person who realized his kinship with the transcendent dimension, the divine, whatever you want to call it. He realized his connectedness, his kinship, his oneness with that. And as he realized that, he became, the transcendent dimension emerged in him, as it does in you. It emerged in him, and then the historical person, Jesus, became the Christ. Therefore, we have in mystical Christianity the term Christ consciousness, which is the transcendent consciousness that emerges, where before there was only the person. And we have in certain Buddhist traditions the term Buddha nature, that says that every human being and everything that's alive has at the core of their being is Buddha nature, or the Buddha as the reality of who you are. That's the teaching in some Buddhist traditions. And it's a beautiful teaching that your true nature is Buddha nature. And you just have to realize your true nature is Buddha nature. Isn't that what we've been talking about? It's just a different name attached to it. In mystical Christianity, it's Christ consciousness. And so Jesus was a precursor who showed the way to Christ consciousness. And if we're focusing on the historical figure of Jesus and realizing that he embodies both the person and the Christ, can become a vehicle for you, if that is suitable for you. And if you still feel drawn to Christianity or any or other religion, that is the way for you to go deepen that, rather than think you have to move into something else. But if that doesn't work for you, then fine. Then walk away and find Christ consciousness somewhere else. And some people don't need any religious structure anymore. This is for the first time, perhaps, in the evolution of humanity, there's spirituality that exists outside of formalized religions. And that's an amazing thing. So many of you may not need the formalized religion anymore, and others may need it, and that is a beautiful thing. You can deepen the way in which you live, practice, and understand your religion so that it becomes an opening into the transcendent dimension within yourself. If you are a Christian and want to deepen certain readings, I would highly recommend. There were certain teachers who expressed the truth of Christianity from a deeper level than the conventional church Christianity. the most in the past, Meister Eckhart, who lived in the early Middle Ages. The most wonderful, his writings are superb and fantastic depth to them, and he uses Christianity to take you very, very deep into the core of it all, the core of all things, into yourself. For many, the beginning of spiritual awakening is to realize that there is this stream of continuous commentary in their minds. And that is the thing, oh, that's interesting. That's a thought, of course, but before the thought, that's interesting, there's the recognition. It's the voice in the head. And the recognition is not the voice in the head, although you might say it after the recognition. But in the moment of recognizing there's a voice in the head, that's not a thought. The recognition of thought is not a thought. The recognition of thought comes through awareness or presence. And awareness or presence is the higher consciousness, the arising new consciousness. Wow. So that is really the meaning of spiritual awakening. By the way, in this first half of our gathering, I will be talking more about it. In the second half, we will do more experiential. But even while I talk about it here, I would hope that if it works for you, there's already also an experiential realization of what it is I'm talking about. So there's the voice in the head. And people say things like, I think. They don't think, because thinking is not a voluntary action for them. So it's a delusion to even say, I think. You don't think, you are being thought by thought. You are created by thought. There's that energy field. It's amazing. So the master said, how can I teach you Zen unless you first empty your cup? No, that's a huge demand. If I'm full of clutter, mental clutter, how am I going to empty my cup? I would immediately be enlightened if I could empty my cup. But the teaching points to something. It points to the word empty, and that's interesting. That is an important word in Buddhism, and I don't think it's a good translation. Who first came up with it, I don't know. In the 19th century, the Europeans started to translate ancient texts from Sanskrit, and one person came up with a translation of the Sanskrit terms sunyata and translated it as emptiness. That doesn't sound so nice. It sounds like something missing or something like that. So I have an alternative translation for the Buddhist term emptiness, so that empty is an important word. So remember, the Zen master said, how can I teach you Zen unless you first empty your cup? Empty. Emptiness, my alternative translation for that is spaciousness. Spaciousness is a dimension of consciousness in you. And that is what we could call the spiritual dimension of consciousness, the deeper or the higher consciousness, just words, doesn't matter. And that is, in every human, it's there. Many don't know that it's there because the clutter is so dense that they have no realization of the underlying spaciousness. And that is why I say in millions of humans that is still a dormant faculty, so to speak. So the most important realization in your life, much more important than what you have achieved on the level of the world, whether your life in worldly terms is regarded as a huge success or a dismal failure, or for most of you probably something in between. That's normal. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed, and then you move back from gaining, losing, high, low, up and down. That's the identity for most. So the clutter of your mind is there, but there are moments in your life when you become aware of something spacious underneath it, but you may not call it that. You may not call it anything. It may arise, for example, in many humans who may never have heard of anything spiritual. They're out there. They don't know that the little bit of that is in them. But they don't know it. There's little glances come occasionally into their lives of that dimension. It's not enough to actually say that the spiritual dimension has awakened in them, but little flashes come up now and then into their lives. And that is enough. Those little flashes from that dimension come into their lives, and that is enough to keep many people sane. And those flashes can come when you might think, when you go out into nature and you see something extraordinarily beautiful like a sunset, for a moment you go, or the vastness of the ocean, or the sky, or the elements, the wind, the storm, and for a moment you go, and it's a moment of intense aliveness, and you feel. And then you may remember that moment a little later. That was such a beautiful moment. Why was it? Yes, maybe what you perceived was beautiful, but you felt something in that moment. You felt a heightened sense of aliveness and a deep peace and connectedness with being, so to speak. You see, why? Because that moment of sense perception of something vast or beautiful freed you for a moment from the incessant stream of thinking. So the incessant stream of thinking, let's say you see this incredible sunset or whatever, and for a moment you give it your complete attention, and for a moment you're not thinking about yourself, your problems, your problematic life history, or your even more problematic future. You're not thinking about anything. For a moment, the stream of thinking subsides, and it goes, and that is, without knowing it, you have a little flash has come up from that dimension, and then the next moment it may come up a few days later again, when you look into the eyes of a baby, 1 year old, maybe just in the street or in a cafe, and the baby looks at you, and the baby is 1 year old, and the eyes are like the baby's, and you know instinctively that the baby is not thinking about you, because thinking hasn't started yet. The words have not accumulated yet, the thoughts haven't started yet, and yet there's a consciousness there. You can see very clearly there's an intense consciousness that's looking through those eyes at you without judging you in any way. And in that moment, for just a few seconds, you feel so good. And you say, Why do you feel so good? Because at that moment, the baby liberated you from your stream of thinking, and again, a little bit of spaciousness opened up inside you. And so for those few seconds when you looked into the eyes of the baby, you were not thinking. and the baby wasn't thinking. So through the baby, you are able to be in that dimension, and it felt so good. Spontaneously, they can arise. They're not recognized by people as ultimately spiritual, but they are. And so many people, there are millions of people who experience those things briefly, but that's enough to give you a sense still of life is worth living. And then there are others who are so burdened by their minds, they cannot even communicate with a baby. They cannot even perceive the beauty of nature anymore because their mind is so noisy that there's a total veil. So they don't look at the baby like, they look at the baby, oh, that's a nice baby. They don't really see the baby. Immediately it's labeled.
I don't really have a formulated question, but I'd like to hear you talk for a second. It's kind of been hinted at here and there, but talk more specifically about the situation of the planet, the ecological situation, without panicking, without getting self-righteous and all these other things. Clearly, a change of consciousness is necessary, but things also have to be done in real time because these are processes happening in time. And so just if you had anything at all to say about that and how these two processes of consciousness and also changing things, doing whatever would be necessary for the planet, how this works together.
Yes, thank you. Are you engaged in that kind of work?
To some extent, and hoping to be more.
Yes. Well, one thing, as you know, I don't need to say it again, the foundation for any action you take is to let it arise from presence rather than from a feeling of fear or anger, because those two are not very productive. What comes out of fear or anger is not productive. Presence is much more powerful. There's an enormous power in presence and true intelligence. Really intelligent action comes out of presence. So that's vital to know. There are many things that need changing in our relationship with the planet. Things seem to be going the wrong way right now. All I can say is do as much as you can to help change the way in which we live on this planet. Do what you can with peace in your heart. That's the main thing, with peace in your heart, because otherwise, without peace, the opposite of peace is war and conflict. So if we don't destroy the planet, we destroy ourselves through war and conflict. The planet, there's more to the planet. This is my intuitive realization, by the way. There is more to the planet than we realize. The planet is a being. It's not a rock floating in space with things growing on top. The planet is a living being. That many humans or scientists cannot accept that. What I mean is, it is pervaded by an intelligent energy field in the same way that your body is pervaded and held together and run by an underlying intelligence that keeps everything, the thousands of functions in your body, because the planet is another kind of body. The thousands of functions that need to be constantly coordinated and controlled, that keep this body alive, keep the atoms and molecules together, keep the organs from cooperating. No human or the greatest computer could possibly do that. Even now, we only understand a fraction of how our physical body operates. There's a vast intelligence built into it. When that intelligence says goodbye, then very quickly the atoms and molecules say goodbye to each other too, and then they depart, and then the form dissolves. The planet is also an intelligence, a being that is intelligent, and it has produced us in a way, not alone. There have been other factors. The sun is also more than a fireball. We think the sun is a ball of just energy. There's more to it than that. We think the sun is extremely hot. Well, hot is one way, but really what that means is the energy of the highest intensity, which our physical body register as extreme heat. The sun is also a celestial being. You don't need to believe me, by the way, but I'll just tell you what my intuitive realization is. And the planet has an intelligence also that one reason why we need to be active in protecting the planet so that we don't use these absurd ways of the resources of the planet, the absurd ways of getting energy, we need to go beyond that. There are other ways. The universe is infinitely abundant. The energy on the external level, the energy, obviously inexhaustible energy, comes continuously from the sun. And all the other energy forms that we discover on the planet are really transformed sun energy. It was once sun energy. So, and to use those is a very primitive way of using energy. And we need to, as soon as possible, and this is the task of scientists and so on, who also need to be present, to go beyond those primitive ways of using the energy that's left over by sun energy on the planet. The planet, if we do not take action, I do not believe that the planet will become destroyed, but we will destroy ourselves. Or the planet, which has an intelligence, but it's just slow, because to a planet 100 years is nothing, 200 years is nothing, 1 second in your lifetime or less. The planet, if the planet feels threatened by humans, I firmly believe that it will eliminate humans. It can do that very easily. We are, because we are connected, our physical form is connected to the energy field of the planet. It's come out of the planet. So the planet could easily, even without violence, the planet could end all humans within 100 years without any act of violence by simply making males and females infertile. That would be an action taken by planetary intelligence. Say, these humans we can't have them anymore, that's too much. Or let's just get rid of 95% of them, and then they can have a new beginning and can try again. But it doesn't have to come to that. So before the planet takes action, and the planet is slow, we need to take action, but with peace, because otherwise we are unconscious beings. We'll just contribute. Even if in our unconscious action we could save the planet, we still wouldn't save ourselves, because we would create warfare if we are unconscious. There are many ways we can destroy ourselves, not just through destroying nature. There are other ways we can destroy ourselves, and we will if the shift in consciousness does not reach a sufficient number of people. But the essence of what I'm saying is peace in your heart. Do not fear. There's more to the planet than you realize. If the planet gets to get rid of you, it will.